Mesdames et messieurs,
The greatest festival of our contemporary society, the Olympic Games, is about to begin.
this is gonna be close.
Oh! They're all completely gassed! They've given it everything on the global bucket! Oh, yeah! Go! Oh!
Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. But that is an Olympic championship.
Ready?
Hello and welcome to another episode of Keep the Flame Alive, the podcast for fans of the Olympics and Paralympics. If you love the games, we are the show for you. Each week we share stories from athletes and people behind the scenes to help you have more fun watching the games. I'm your host, Jill Jarrett, joined as always by my lovely co-host, Alison Brown. Alison, 1 month to go. How are you?
Yes, we are 1 month out. I mean, we've been talking about this for 6 months. It's a lot. It's overwhelming. It is so exciting. And I'm ready to leave tomorrow and probably won't be ready to leave for another year.
That's exactly the perfect way to say that. I cannot agree with you more. Every once in a while, I get a moment to just relax and go, oh, this is happening. And I'm very excited. But yeah, it's like my eyes are bigger than my stomach of what I want to do versus what we can reasonably do for a 2-person-ish operation.
Absolutely. And even as a fan, I know my social media is packed. You know, the feed's just overwhelming, the amount of trials that are, you cannot watch everything, you cannot absorb everything. And you have to accept that. Just as a spectator, never mind as part of what we're doing on the show, but just say, you know what, I'm going to enjoy what I see. I can always catch up later if I need to, and that's okay.
Right. And it makes me have a lot more respect for larger news organizations who can send multiple people to an event to cover it and have, I don't know how many hundreds of people that NBC has working for them right now, putting stuff together. But just when you have so many more resources, you can do so much. And you have to learn that, you know, when you don't have as many resources, you learn your limits and you have to stick within your lane in order to produce something that's good and fun. And hopefully that's what we'll be able to do for you.
And doing something a little different. We do
That's-
not have a staff of drivers or guides or translators who are going to be getting us around Paris. This can be great for the show. This could be awful if I don't make it out of the metro alive.
We also do not have staff to tell us how the bathrooms work. This is that's, I think, one of the things I'm most worried about is that it sounds like I've been to Europe. I've used toilets. And I've used toilets in many countries. I'm worried about this for us.
I am going to be going to some of the farther afield venues. So I'm hoping, since the French saved me from Beijing, the mountains above Beijing, that just by nature that the French will make sure I get to where I need to go.
We'll find out in a month. We'll see. I hope, listeners, I hope you're on the edge of your seats for that.
At the edge of your toilet seats.
Hopefully not. And if you're not, let us know. We'll try to cut back on the toilet talk. All right. Stuff that's not in the toilet is gymnastics and fencing today. We have many more interviews from the Team USA Media Summit and the Fencing Media Day that you went to. First off, we're talking artistic and rhythmic gymnastics. Who do we have today?
First up is Yul Moldauer. He is trying for his second Olympics. He has won 5 gold medals at the U.S. Championships, including this year on parallel bars. And he has been competing internationally on the senior level since 2017. I didn't realize when we talked to him how long he's been around. Brody Malone is a 3-time and reigning U.S. all-around champion. He was the 2022 world champion on high bar, but in a competition last year in Germany, he fell and caused just incredible damage to his leg. And in our chat with him, we talked a little bit about that and a little bit about his comeback. And last up is Evita Griskenas. She finished 12th in the Rhythmic Gymnastics all-around competition in Tokyo. And she is the first American to win an all-around medal at an FIG World Cup event in Rhythmic Gymnastics. And to Jill's utter delight, she brought her clubs with her.
And let me play with them. Take a listen.
Yul Moldauer, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So yesterday we were talking about altitude.
Yeah, so I was thinking after I talked to you and you said, yeah, training at altitude is great for endurance, but does it mess you up on tricks? Like, is there a difference when you're doing flips on the high bar and then you go sea level?
You know, I've never thought about that, and it's just the way my mindset is when I get to a meet, I don't care if we're at high elevation or sea level or the equipment is Gymnova to Speed to AAI to any of that. I know as a gymnast that you have to go in there and just trust it and be ready for anything. And so thinking about the altitude and feeling the thicker air or thinner air, it's something I don't even feel. My mind is just do my job for the team, and maybe some people might feel it. You know, maybe some people think running down the vault might feel thicker in the air, which now that I think about it, it has. But I don't let those external factors interfere with what I have to do internally for the team.
Yeah, just because your timing is so precise. I mean, literal split seconds.
Yeah.
That the smallest differences can throw you off.
Yeah, they really can. I mean, that's why it's important to really do what you need to do in your warm-ups. You know, everyone's different. Some people might be doing routines the first day they get there. Some people might just be filling out the events. But it's like you said, we're all different. We all have different timings. So it's really up to your own training plan to really, feel out the board, the bounce of the floor, the bounce of the high bar, the stiffness of the rings, and thankfully, you can adjust a lot of that. The tension on the high bar, tension on the rings, chalk up the P-bars a little more. So it's really up to you to make sure when you get to the arena, you make yourself feel as comfortable as possible and get all the keys.
One of the things we want to talk about, dismount off the pommel horse. Because if I'm sitting watching it at home, it looks like, I just have to do a handstand. But what does the momentum of the movement ahead of time, how does that affect your...
So if you want to know what a pommel horse dismount feels like, get 2 chairs, put them together, and you'll hold yourself there for a minute. And then try and swing up to a handstand and see how hard that is.
That's what it...
So it's all about keeping the momentum going and using your strength, because that is what defines a pommel routine. Did he have a good dismount? And if it looks slow and he's shaking, it's not a kick up the handstand. You're on 2 chairs, try it out at home for a minute, and try and swing up to handstand and see if you get cramps in your triceps.
Because dismounts from other apparatus seem much more difficult. They're much flashier. Mm-hmm. And the pommel is just, up and you're not going to fall. But...
Yeah, so it's a momentum and strength. But also on any event with the dismount, you have to be, your endurance has to be there, your grip strength has to be there. Whatever it is, you have to make sure that you're prepared for that dismount, because everyone can do a dismount by itself easily. It's when you put the routine before it, how well can you do the dismount? And I think that's why sticking a routine is so important, because it puts the cherry on top.
It's the last thing the judges say.
Exactly.
Perfect.
My name is Evita Griskenas, and I'm a rhythmic gymnast.
Okay, thank you. You had the clubs. How heavy are those clubs?
They're not very, actually. You can feel them if you'd like. So they're, I wish I could tell you how many grams they are. I don't really remember. But yeah, the top is rubber, and the rest of it is plastic, and so they can stick into each other, actually. Wrong way.
No, end to end.
Oh, this. No. You're right. She was right. Yeah,
because I've seen
into each other. Yes. And
balance this on your forehead every once in a while?
no, not really. It's possible, but have not tried that.
Do you practice with weighted?
No, we don't practice with weighted clubs, but we do sometimes practice with a double ribbon to make the patterns a lot more sharper and clear. So you kind of weigh the ribbon down by making it a double ribbon and heavier, and then you work through the patterns to really tire out your forearm muscles, and then you get back to the other ribbon and it feels super light. But that's the only time we would really add weights to it.
I do have a question about what is going on with Russia, in the sense of the Russian women have not been competing for several years. Have you seen a difference in how judges are judging, how people are putting programs together without that influence?
I don't necessarily pay attention to those things. I'm very focused on myself and knowing that what matters is what I execute and how. Obviously, there's a certain style that Russian athletes have on the floor, which maybe Rhythmic in general has shifted in a different direction. But then again, it all matters on the code of points, not necessarily what one country is doing or the other.
A lot of differences this time in code of points. There were a lot of shifts this quad.
I like this one a lot better.
Oh, that was going to be my question. What have you been able to do? Does it allow you more freedom, or just
Yeah,
things you like doing better?
It fuels a lot more creativity, and I think it's safer because this time you're limited in the amount of acrobatics that you can do on masteries, which are sort of the little tricks. And also, I think you can create more interesting connections and have more of that expressivity and art being integrated into, the routine.
What's your favorite apparatus?
I don't have a favorite apparatus.
Oh, you're
I don't
lying,
think it's
Evita.
No, I'm not. I don't think
No,
I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's fair to pit them against each other because I can bounce, roll, throw, catch all of them. Yes, I can bounce a ribbon. But what's really important is the composition, and I feel like it's almost unfair for me to pit my jovial clubs routine to my very serious hoop routine because they're just so different, and the storyline that I'm trying to tell with my body is very different for each of these apparatuses. Granted, there's some days when it's cold in the gym and you really don't feel like doing clubs. But other than that, it's sometimes you feel like an apparatus, and other times you don't. You feel like doing the slower routine or not. But yeah, otherwise I feel like it's unfair to pick a favorite.
Do you like to do different interpretations with each apparatus? Like, is the hoop the jovial one, or
so it
or
depends
do you change
on the
mood
of what you feel in that season?
I think it's more of the mood of the season. Obviously, there's some musics that, and this is what rhythmic people are attuned to, you'll hear music and you're like, that would make a good clubs routine. Also seeing how the stage presence, how it would, interplay with all of that is important. I think this time around, last year I had very serious, intense, dramatic clubs music, and this time I found, literally a Broadway musical that was just so exciting and, thrilling and gospel-y, and I loved it, and I was like, I have to do it, but it felt like clubs, and I was like, all right, we're doing clubs to this, so. And sometimes you'll take a music, so you'll have one music that you'll use for ribbon one year, and then the next year you're like, let me try it with balls. So I've done that before, way in the past, but this time it's all fresh.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Brody, you're ours now.
All right.
That's okay.
Gotta get to lunch.
Oh, God, we feel you.
Yeah.
How much? 1 minute.
We have 1 minute. Well, I have one question.
Amazing.
All right.
I have 475, but we'll pick one. I'm just going to have you say your name so we keep our tapes organized.
Yeah, Brody Malone.
Okay. I'm first going to tell you that our fans love you. We have a lot of gymnastics people, but you've had your injuries. I understand the physical recovery, but when it comes to mental, how do you know your leg's going to hold up when you're flying off the high bar? How do you get over that fear, for lack of a better word?
Honestly, I just kind of push it to the back of my mind. It's
But
not
how?
I don't know.
You just do.
Yeah. You just push it to the back of your mind. I trust myself when I'm doing gymnastics. So, I had a bad injury. I had one slip up, and it happened at a bad time. But, I've had plenty of other dismounts that have gone perfectly fine before that. So why focus on the one that I messed up and hurt myself? I'll trust myself that I'm able to do it based off of the thousands of others that I've done,
What are you most excited in the new code of points that you get to do differently this year?
The new,
new code for this quad that you get to, that changed for you.
Let's see. Well, I'm doing a new skill on high bar that I haven't done previously. I'm doing it's called a Lucan. It's like the layout to catch it with a full twist, and I'm doing that from a talk half, which you get connection bonus now for that. And I don't believe you got connection bonus last quad for connecting out of talks. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
Have you done the Lucan in front of Lucan?
I have not. I should. That'd be cool.
Won't he be? He's got to be at trials.
Oh yeah, I'm sure he will be. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank y'all so much.
Good to meet you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, gymnasts. Evita has already secured her spot for Paris, so we will be seeing her there. Yul and Brody will be competing at the U.S. Gymnastics trials starting today, June 27th through June 30th in Minneapolis. Streaming is available on Peacock and TV cover. Streaming is available on Peacock, and TV coverage will air on USA, E, and NBC. Right, next.
We got the ladies of Epee. So once again, thank you to USA Fencing for letting me come and talk to these amazing women. These were my first interviews of the day, so we'll all sound a little chipper here. First up is Kat Holmes. She is a graduate of Princeton University, where she was a 4-time NCAA All-American. Kat competed in Rio and Tokyo and will compete in the team competition. She is currently studying at the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai. And Cebula was the 2019 NCAA individual champion. She represented Columbia University, and she will compete in both the team and individual events in Paris. Margherita Guzzi Vincenti is competing in her first Olympics at age 34. She came to the United States from Italy for college and decided to make the US her home. Margherita will be competing in both the team and individual events. And last up is Hadley Husisian. She is the youngest member of the Epee team and only moved up to the senior level last year. She competes for Princeton and will also fence in both the team and individual events in Paris.
And she talks about iCarly in her interview.
Right. I asked her about the iCarly story. In the media kit, they included that Hadley had her first exposure to fencing from the show iCarly.
Amazing how TV can do that to you. All right, take a listen to our épée fencers.
Why épée?
Why épée? Well, I mean, the boring answer to that is that it was the only weapon that my club had. So when I started, like, that was kind of what was there. But it turns out that it really did fit my personality. I feel like épées tend to be a little bit more geeky, maybe a little bit more nerdy. So kind of like fit right in there. And I also don't think that I would have adapted well to right-of-way rules. I think I would have gotten very frustrated by those.
I'm so glad you said that, because my partner, who is not here with us today, is always talking about right-of-way. Epee does not have right-of-way?
We do not. No, we do not, which is really excellent, because I don't understand them at all. Like, I mean, I've like messed around with foil and saber a little bit, but even like all the years I've been in the sport, like when I'm watching foil and saber, I still can't make the calls most of the time. I'm like, I have no idea.
Okay, all the years you've been in the sport, this is third trip.
Yes.
How has your physical training changed as you've gotten older?
Yeah, I mean, like, I'd say that when I was younger, I just kind of trained a lot more blindly. Like, I went to practice, and that was what you kind of did. But like, as I've grown, I've taken a much more thoughtful approach, especially as like during the past quad, 3 years, I've been in medical school, so time has been like, I've not nearly had as much time. So really looking at like, what can I do to optimize my training with the little bit of time I had. So, you know, kind of looking at the whole year and my tournament layout and taking a much more periodized approach. And then, you know, really thinking very thoughtfully about each training session, each lifting session, each conditioning session. And then also, quite frankly, like, as trite as it sounds, like, listening to my body more. Like, I just hurt more, frankly. And so, like, recovery has played a much bigger role this quad than it has before as well.
What is the fencing to medical school pipeline?
Oh, a lot of tears. A lot of tears. No, so I mean, I've always wanted to be a doctor ever since I was a kid. And fencing, I think, is actually a sport that like facilitates that in a lot of ways. I mean, like, and the NCAA programs have a very strong presence in fencing. So, you know, I was pre-med in college, majored in psych and neuroscience. And then, you know, med school, it was really challenging, because, you know, when you go to med school, like, your top priority is becoming a doctor. And so fitting in training is challenging, even more so as fitting in competitions. But I think, like, you know, we start going to World Cups when we're young teens, and so we learn how to manage school, we learn how to manage training, we learn how to manage competitions all together. It's taken to a new extreme in medical school. Like, we did as much in 2 weeks as we would do in a semester in college. So like, I would literally be at World Cups, like, studying in between bouts. Like, it was rough, but alas, like, you know, I want to, you know, go into sports medicine. I'm on track for that, and I made the Olympic team.
Does that change your approach to training with your medical training?
I mean, for sure. So like, I know a lot more now. Like, I mean, I understand like metabolism. I understand biomechanics. I mean, I say I understand these things in a looser sense. Like, I'm by no means an expert. And then my research that I do is all based on fencing sports med. So also understanding the sport itself, like what the most common injuries are, the most common mechanisms that lead to injury, knowing how to take better care of myself and what to train. We know that fencing is an asymmetric sport, but, we don't know to what extent. Like, okay, so, we're establishing that, but how do we compensate for that? And how and will that benefit the sport? So certainly, everything from understanding, those mechanisms to then also, understanding different forms of metabolism of what I need to put in my body when, all of that have really played a role in kind of helping me become the athlete that is sitting right here.
How do you train for the asymmetry? And so that you're not literally crooked?
No. I mean, it's very complicated, and I honestly wish I had a better answer for you. I mean, the answer is like cross-training. But to what extent, I don't have a great answer. I do strength and conditioning 6 days a week, and like I'm still, like, you just look at my right side, I'm right-handed, and it's much physically larger than my left. And when we get tests done, looking at those strength asymmetries by what's called like a dynameter, where they actually measure those strength asymmetries, or with force plates. Despite the fact that I do such heavy cross training, my right side is still dominant by every metric. And so then I guess you're just kind of looking at, okay, so what's the best way to prevent injury? Because we're never going to really attain pure symmetry. And so that really comes to looking at joint stabilization, looking at the hips to make sure those are in line, and then the spine. And so it comes down to just like a lot of core, making sure that that's really stable and can support the frame, and then just making sure that the body can sustain load on each side, so that even when you are fencing in that asymmetric position, your joints and your muscles can load appropriately to compensate for that asymmetry.
What are the injuries that fencers need to worry about?
Yeah, I mean, so this was I love asking this question to people. So like before I had started my research, there was really no great answer. There had been studies looking at acute injuries in competitions, or a number of injuries across Olympic Games, but nobody really had a good answer as to like what is the most common injuries fencers have. And so I can answer now that in the US, the most common injury is actually elbow tendonitis. Like by far and away, if we're looking at no matter the level of fencer, no matter like foil, épée, saber, men, woman, elbow tendonitis, number one, followed by ankle sprains, and then tendonitis of the knee, ligament tears, ruptures of the knee, and then meniscal tears within the knee. So those are really the most common ones that fencers need to look out for. So really in there you have a mixture of chronic with that tendonitis and then acute of those strains and sprains.
Right, I hear sprained ankle and I'm like, the quick footwork.
Exactly,
you just put that foot wrong.
Yeah.
Has it changed the way are you thinking of these things? Like, are you able to separate Dr. Cat from Olympian Cat?
Yeah, I mean,
on the piss day.
For sure. So, I mean, I like, again, like I've had experience with that since I was 15. And so when I'm on the strip, like I very much am like the fencer that's out there. And when I'm in the box with my teammates, that is my role. But also thinking a lot like, I want my career later on to be, I want to do fencing sports med. That's really what I want to do and help USA Fencing and kind of help the U.S. Olympic Committee in that aspect. So I'd say that like Fencing Cat really informs Dr. Cat. And while Dr. Cat may inform how Fencing Cat trains, there's less of an overlap in that way. But, I tend to retire after Paris, and so really kind of utilizing the totality of my experience to really inform that latter part, that next part of my career.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
They're waving.
And Cebula.
Why épée?
Oh, I admittedly was kind of forced into épée. They were like, you are 5'11", you are kind of thin, go to épée. Like distance runner build, So I was kind of thrown into that. I know most people get to start out in like foil and try saber, but no.
And you were, I hate to say you were a little older, but you were in high school when you started fencing. Mm-hmm. So what's the advantage for you starting later than a lot of the other fencers?
Yeah, so I actually wanted to start earlier. I wanted to start when I was 10 years old. I saw the 2008 Beijing Olympics and just absolutely fell in love. I think because I wanted to do it for so long, I had a little bit of an edge. And also around 15, 16 years old, a lot of kids at that age have been starting around 8 or 9 years old, and they are already being combed over at colleges for the recruiting process and having that pressure, whereas I was kind of just beginning like my love story, and I felt freer in my fencing. So I definitely noticed that when I first started, the club environment, kids are a little more stressed, where I was just kind of there to have fun.
Now, I was interested in the Barnard Columbia relationship. If you can explain that to me, because you were a Barnard student, but fencing for Columbia.
Yes.
How does that work exactly?
So Barnard College itself, it's like the sister school of Columbia because they didn't admit women for
right. That was one of the seven sisters.
Yes, exactly. And that's kind of how their athletics program also came about. I have to admittedly look at the dates a little closer, but yeah, it's an interesting relationship. It's hard to like separate the two because it was funny. Like Barnard was like my little home nest in the larger Columbia campus. You know, I would go back to Barnard to take my classes, but then I'd scurry across the street to go into like the dungeon of the athletics center to fence. And yeah.
How has training changed since you graduated and you're not in the NCAA system anymore?
It's definitely a little more intense. I feel like being on a campus, while it was hard, everything was, within a block or two of each other. Nowadays, I train at 4 different clubs a week, and they are scattered throughout. One club is in Coney Island, the other one's in Port Washington, Long Island. So I have to make my own schedule, budget my own time. Again, I did have some aspects of that in college, but obviously now it's a little more extreme and intense.
I'm glad you mentioned budget, because there's not only budgeting your time, there's budgeting your life. And we know fencers just rake in the bucks from their sport. So how are you balancing that, having a life and affording your apartment and trying to train?
Yes. So I actually am still at home with my family. Yeah, and this isn't really talked about, but I might have had like the most affordable journey into fencing. I started at 15, and I didn't start going into national tournaments, they're called NACs, until I was like 18 years old. And so I did my freshman year at Fordham because I missed the recruiting process. I didn't know how it worked. I didn't have a high enough ranking because I wasn't going to NACs. They were very expensive. And when I transferred over to Barnard, Michael made a point of, covering all the expenses for the NACs, encouraging me to try out for junior team, covering all the expenses for that. That's how he creates, this incredible Olympic pipeline program. And then again, like the circumstance, I got very lucky. This is a little unlucky, but COVID hit. There was no fencing for a year and a half. You saved on expenses. And then I was part of the New York Athletic Club, which has elite athlete program. And so for the first year, everything is covered. And then after that first year, you get coverage based on your ranking. Luckily, when that 1 year ended, I was ranked high enough that USA Fencing covered me. I was in the 4. So I've been very lucky and blessed that my expenses have been minimal in comparison to what they could have possibly been. And I think that's not really talked about. And I hoped as the visibility of the sport increases, costs can go down. And I'm really trying to push for that, after the games. But yeah.
How expensive is a weapon?
Yes.
And is it pieces? Because I know there's the handle and the so are you buying it all at once, or is it separate pieces?
So you could buy a completed weapon, but most of us just like, if a blade breaks, you just swap out the blade itself, and then you keep, your bell guard and your grip and everything, and then you replace those as needed. But a blade costs around like $200-ish. And you're supposed to have around 5 or 6 with you at all times. A completed weapon, with the guard and everything, is about $300. A FIE, so like an internationally approved jacket. You don't need that at the domestic level, but pants cost $400, jacket costs $400 to $500. It all adds up.
And how do you travel with them?
How do I travel? I have a fencing bag, and it looks like a giant golf bag, and we're encouraged, because bags get lost all the time. We're encouraged to put everything in our carry-on. So it looks pretty funny at TSA. They're like, what the hell is in your bag? It's like a mask and a bunch of wires and, a whole fencing kit. And the golf bag itself, the checked baggage, only has our blades. So God forbid our baggage gets lost, or more often than not, it's delayed. We can just, unfortunately, purchase weapons or borrow from other countries, that sort of thing.
Which kind of handle do you use?
I use a French grip.
Why do you like that better?
It is funkier than a pistol grip. And with a pistol grip, you have more strength, you have more power. It's in the grip of, say, like a pistol shape. It's like you're holding a gun, so you beat the blade a lot more. You could do a lot more blade work and sort of that sort of thing. French grip, you have way less power, but I like to say a little bit more precision, and you could go a little more wild, a little more free, and you definitely have to be, there's a whole like different rhythm to French grip fencing.
Now, you are very tall.
Yes.
And you are very lanky. I'm not insulting you by saying
no, it's
what advantage is that for you, besides obviously reach?
Let me see. Definitely being tall helps with reach. I guess, but it's funny because, you know, I was shuttled into épée because I'm tall, but some of the best épée fencers, like world ranked 1 through 10, are very short. Very short. So height isn't a determining factor, really. It does help in the beginning, but after that, you know, you can't just rely on reach alone. And being on the thinner side, I don't know. Unfortunately, we're so cardio heavy that, again, it kind of, it's the distance runner build that helps. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. He's waving at me.
My name is Margherita Vincenti.
So you and I share dual citizenship with Italy. So I wanted to ask you about the differences because you grew up fencing in Italy. How is American fencing different from Italian and European training?
I just love the American system. First of all, people here are so modern when it comes to technology. I mean, we have state-of-the-art clubs, state-of-the-art facilities, and so it's just unbelievable to train here compared to maybe Italy, where things are a little more old version, old style. They have the antique flavor for sure, but here everything is just phenomenal and fantastic. So I'm really appreciative to be here.
When we spoke to Eli a few weeks ago, he talked about how the United States has a mix of styles. So your coach here, because you went to Penn State?
I did, yes.
So how was that transition to all of a sudden, you know, you had all Italian coaches and now you have this mix of Eastern European and Asian and more traditional Western European?
Yeah, I think it's one of our advantages, to be honest, because it makes our style so unique. It's a blend of all different cultures and all different really techniques. And so usually when you go to World Cups, you will identify the Italian style, the French style, the German style, the Korean style, whatever it is. But America, being just all these styles together, I think gives us the unique edge to really find the right techniques against every single country. And so I believe it's really a good thing for us.
You are one of the older athletes, and I can say this because I'm still like 15 years older than you. How has your training changed? You know, what was your training week like when you were 20 versus now?
I feel really my body hasn't really changed that much, really hasn't aged. Thank God I have good genes. I have, knock on wood, I never had any injuries. And so I feel that my training has been pretty much similar to when I was younger, although now it's there's a lot more maybe mental preparation and more tactical things that maybe in the past we're just still building upon, but now it's more like, okay, let's have everything done in a specific way.
So what's changed for the mental? What do you do differently?
The mental is, I would say, growing up back in the days, the mental part wasn't as big as it is nowadays. There's a lot of emphasis on really doing self-talk, visualization, positive thinking, meditation, just being with yourself. And I think that can really give you an edge in many things. So it's really the discovery, I think, of the mental aspect in the game and how important it is for the game that has really improved us as athletes in the last few years. And it's something that was really not apparent back in the days. And we recognize that that's just as important as train your body to win a tournament. And in épée specifically, because everything comes down to just a fraction of a second, if your mind is strong, you can really overcome a lot of the obstacles that maybe you might have physically or other things. But if your mind collapses, you're basically done for the game.
Do you talk to yourself in English or Italian?
In English, to believe it or not, yes.
So
I think in English.
Is that because you're here, you're living here and training in English?
Absolutely.
So great.
Yeah, since I moved here, kind of my brain really switched from thinking and processing everything in Italian to just now it's English. And it's funny because when I talk back to my family or friends, sometimes I come up with funny words or funny languages or sentences just because my thinking now is so American and the Italian is kind of fading away a little bit, which is strange.
Do you swear in English or Italian?
I actually don't swear.
Oh.
Sorry.
Why épée?
Why épée? So I started actually with foil when I was a little kid. I started when I was 7.5 years old, and I did it for 5 years. Usually when you start in a young age, they, at least in Italy, they want you to start with foil because it's the weapon that gives you the basics, that right away you understand the rules of fencing, and it gives you a lot of discipline. I decided to switch to épée because I felt that my body was more conformed for épée. I was on the taller side, my speed, I felt that it was better for épée, and I just liked the black and white aspect of the game in terms of if you score a point, it's your point. In foil and saber, there's a lot of judge decision. The referee has to award the touch because it's a right-away weapon, so it doesn't mean that if your light goes off, you necessarily get a touch. So sometimes there is bias in that. In épée, it's black and white, and the target being the whole body makes it even more interesting because that's where you really have to trick your opponent into making noise somewhere and really focusing his or her attention there, when in reality, you want to go completely somewhere else.
If you had to convince someone to watch épée, what's your sales pitch for getting into fencing?
Yes, fencing is a physical chess. It's a physical chess because it really makes you work hard on the strip physically. You move a lot, right? But you also have to set up your opponent in a way that you can checkmate your opponent. So fencing is very interesting because when you watch it even from the outside, even if you don't understand much of the rules of fencing, it really translates into what life is. Let me explain why. In life, sometimes you have to advance and you have to attack. So you have to go and pursue a goal, right? And that's when you want to maybe be forceful in your attack in fencing. Sometimes in life you have to wait a little bit, retreat, wait for the right moment. It's all about the timing in life to accomplish goals, to accomplish things. Same as in fencing. When you set up your actions, when you set up your points, that's how you gotta do.
What are you most excited about for Paris? This is going to be your first time Olympics.
Yes.
And going back, I assume some family's going to be able to come over. So what's are you looking for besides the Grand Palais?
For sure. I've been to Paris many times when I was a kid, of course, living in Europe and traveling a lot with my family and friends. Paris was always a place where we used to go. I think going there now as part of the U.S. delegation, U.S. team, is in bringing so much pride of representing our nation is something that I really cherish about these games. I feel that I've received so much from the United States that it's my honor to go there on the strip to represent our country. And so just to live the whole experience, just seeing fellow athletes, to see how they compete, to ask them questions about their sports and just get to know people, I think it's something that really attracts me about the games. And of course, working hard for our team and try to get a medal and try to come home with the best result we can.
Okay, perfect.
Hadley, Husisian.
Okay. So why épée?
Ooh, I gotta be honest, I started at this one club that my mom found for me, and we did one bout in épée, one in foil, and one in saber, and épée was the only one that I won, so the competitive side of me decided that was going to be the route that I went with, and very glad that I was able to win that 5 touches because it put me where I am today.
You took some time off from school.
Yes.
Are you going back in the fall, or are you going back?
Yeah, I'll be going back in the fall, so I just had to go through the process of re-enrollment and re-registering for classes, which I'm very excited for to get back into the swing of things, but of course the next few months are pretty exciting as well.
So how does that change for you in terms of you had the real structure of school and NCAA rules, and now it's all training all the time?
It took some figuring out, because I think fencers especially, but sort of any high-level athletes that are also enrolled in school are going to be used to pretty much being on all the time and always feeling like they need to be productive, and the times when they're not training, they need to be doing homework, and when they're not in school, they need to be practicing. So having that sort of dead time was new to me, and it always made it kind of tough to turn it off when it was time to take a break. But that took some figuring out, and if I were to go through another Olympic cycle, I think I'd be more prepared for it now. But it was definitely an adjustment, but it was one that allowed me to pursue things outside of just academics and sport. That was a really fun opportunity that I didn't anticipate.
What's your mental training look like? Because I think it was Margherita said to me already, it's physical chess. Mm-hmm. So what does that do? Because you're very young. I know you've been doing this a long time, but how do you prep your brain to do this?
Yeah, that was another thing that I haven't thought about a ton, just because it was always go, 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 and there wasn't really time to sit back and take that aspect of it as a top priority, but it was interesting. So I took up journaling. I took up sports psych. Like talking to friends became really important, and just having a few trusted confidants to confide in, because at times like you'd go through these periods where you're honestly like a bit bored, like practice could sometimes be a bit redundant, and then I didn't again have school to turn back to, and then all of a sudden it would spike up and it'd be the high stress of competition and a perform at all costs sort of environment. So it was a roller coaster, and it took a lot of adjustment, but it was like a trial and error sort of process, and I learned a lot about myself outside of just who I am on the strip through this year.
What's the difference mentally when it's a world championship versus I'm looking at the Olympics?
It being a world championship, like, it is a huge accomplishment to make it, but it does happen every year, so there's a lot more opportunities to be able to do that. But it was really interesting, the first tournament of the cycle, even though it was sort of an arbitrary point in the year where you go to one World Cup and it's of a certain like level of stakes, and then you go to the next one and all of a sudden like people are screaming, people are crying like after every point, and you're like, whoa, like this is, it was just another World Cup and you are fencing the same people in the same locations, but that level of pressure, like you saw a lot of crazy things happen this year, like a lot of upsets, a lot of people who you thought were shoo-ins, like sort of not being able to perform at their highest level because like there just was that much extra pressure with it being the Olympics as opposed to something that happens annually.
Please tell me the iCarly story. I saw that note
your
and
stuff.
I had to ask.
Yeah, I mean, I used to watch that with my family back when I was in elementary school, and I really, it didn't immediately dazzle me just seeing fencing on screen. I didn't really understand it. Like, I thought that the masks also obscured your vision, so people were going at it blind. And it didn't really have, like, a lot of, like, I wasn't putting a lot of thought into it until I initially wanted to go into archery, actually, and I was on the boardwalk with my family for like a beach vacation and did a like shooting game and was half decent at it, and my mom made the leap of logic that I would have like a star career in archery as a result, but there was such a long wait list that we went with the second option of sort of like niche sport, which ended up being fencing, which had a much shorter wait list, and very happy that I didn't get my top choice in that moment.
Talk a little bit about the difference between you've got a college team and now you're on the U.S. national team with people you may or may not know terribly well, and how that team comes together.
It's definitely interesting. I mean, I definitely know these people well because fencing's such a small community that I'm very aware of who they are. We've traveled together this whole time for the last few years. I've only been in the senior circuit for a couple years because of my age and because of like the pandemic, but it's certainly a fun aspect of fencing that they might not have in as many sports, but like we have an age variation of like 14 years on this team, and we have such like different life experiences. So that's a very interesting sort of thing because you have a little more in common with your college teammates. You're all around the same age, you're studying, you're following the same schedule, but being able to take an almost sort of motley group of individuals and from all like four corners of the nation and stick them together on a team, and they're all bringing something different to the table. That's just such a unique experience.
Okay, great. They're giving me the hand signal.
Thank you so much, Kat and Margherita and Hadley.
The women are having a nice run-up to Paris. They swept the podium in the individual event at the Pan American Zonal Championships this week. Margherita defeated Hadley for the gold, and Anne won the bronze. So again, thank you, USA Fencing, for having me that media day. We are not done with our fencing interviews. We've still got foil to do. So we've got the men and women of foil coming up soon.
We also have something special going on. We're doing a giveaway.
We do. We have some swag for you all, some fun items of Olympics and Paralympics and Team USA that we have gotten at these various media events, actually, and we will be handing those out to you. You sign up for our newsletter. You get additional entries if you share us on your social media. We will have a link to that entry in the show notes and on our social media pages.
So, and if you are already signed up for our newsletter list, you will be automatically entered. So you can also share the newsletter, share the show on your social media for additional entries, but know that you already entered. And we welcome new newsletter subscribers at any time because you don't want to miss Alison's fun stories. You had a good one this week.
Tante Maison.
We have some more hospitality house news. There will be a Casa Mexico, a Mongolia house, and a Pavilion Chinese Taipei. They will all be in Parc de la Villette, if that's familiar to you. It's like Hospitality House Central there in this huge park area. We don't have a ton of details about these three houses. Mexico's going to be ticketed. We don't know if that's free tickets or paid tickets. Mongolia will be free, except for some to be announced special events. And then the Chinese Taipei Pavilion will be free. You can keep track of everything on houseparty.blog. And also for the hospitality houses that are in Parc de la Villette, there's also a handy map and list of them at lavillette.com. We'll have a link to that in the show notes. Have you seen this games map?
I am overwhelmed by this games map. There is so much information on there.
Okay, Paris 2024 has put out a interactive games map that has venues, events, torch relay stuff, and there's so many special events going on. So if you're looking for the cultural events around the Olympics, if you're looking for fun stuff to do around that has an Olympics connection, if you're trying to figure out the venues and where they are in the hospitality houses, they put it all together in an interactive game map. The events are really cool. They range from like scavenger hunts for kids to inclusive Zumba sessions and more. So like if you wanted to go work out while you were in Paris and didn't know what to do, check this map out because there might be like free yoga days or whatever that you can do. I know that Sephora had special stuff too.
Ooh.
Yeah. I know that's right up your alley.
It is. And it is a little overwhelming when you first look at it, but if you put in the days you're going to be there, or if you start categorizing things, it becomes much more manageable. So don't be scared when you look at this and it's just the map is full of color and full of lines and you feel like this is not going to help me. It's just going to confuse me more. Once you start selecting things, it really is just a great resource.
And super helpful if you're going to be at an event or section of town that might be not near your hotel and you have a couple hours to kill before you can get into the venue. Check out the map and see what's going on because there's going to be something. Also coming to your screens is a sneak preview of the opening ceremonies. This is going to happen on Friday, June 28th. Olympics.com is going to tease an advanced look at the performances. And by advanced look, they mean 30 seconds. And it is supposed to be something dancey related and is said to mix contemporary and urban dance. So we will see what this is like. They have announced that the director of dance for the opening ceremonies is Maud Lepladec, who is a renowned choreographer and director of the Centre Chorégraphique National d'Orléans. She has worked with ceremonies director Thomas Joly before. In 2016, they collaborated on the opera Eliogaballo. So the ceremonies, all four of them together, will have a total of 3,000 artists. And we'll put a link in the show notes to this article that talks about what Maud is doing, because she'll be working with small groups of dancers, and they'll be like, well, there's 50 of us here, but we know that we're doing X in a bigger production of like 400 people, and we don't know what everybody else is doing. And if you are in Paris now, and if you are an early riser, you may wander over to the Seine and see some boat training because they've been doing that very early in the morning. And luckily, the ceremonies has backup plans for different types of weather. They've been focusing on that.
Right, because on our last show, we talked about that the Seine was running very quickly, and there goes a few countries and you miss them. So as you would hope, they're trying to account for every variable.
Also, some good news is that France Télévisions will have 24/7 coverage of the Paralympics. They will have daily coverage on France 2 and France 3, and then all events will be broadcast live and on demand on France.tv. And online, there's also going to be a live chat fan zone that you can comment in real time with other people who are watching with you. So I'm very glad to see that. And Team USA is still collaborating with Skims, and we have a new collection out.
Right. So there's a new capsule collection for 2024. Jessica Long, our Paris swimmer, is a model, and she's been posting some beautiful shots of herself from that photo shoot on her social media. And they are the official underwear provider, which underwear collaborator, excuse me, for Team USA, which I didn't know we needed, but I say why not? And we will have a link to that collection in the show notes. It really is some cool stuff.
It is, and they've got some adaptive underwear too, which is really nice.
LA, here we come.
I'm still like bowled over at the stadium news that we talked about in the last episode.
I'm so excited. Given your experience at Lucas Oil with swimming in a football stadium and how successful that was, I am so glad LA was watching that and respond. I mean, they weren't responding to it, but they were certainly watching the prep for that and said, I see an opportunity.
Right. And we have been to SoFi, so we know what an amazing stadium that is. And putting swimming there, it's going to be cool.
And how much branding is going to have to be covered up on SoFi.
And I believe that was a Pepsi stadium, if I remember correctly.
It was.
What
Not
else
for long.
What else will be cool is that LA 28 has just announced that their proposal to feature paraclimbing on the Paralympic sport program has been ratified by the International Paralympic Committee. This is the first time that an organizing committee has ever added a Paralympic sport to the Paralympic program. So now there are 22 sports for LA, and it's going to be really exciting to see this sport in action come. It's only like 4 years away, 4.5 years away.
You will sneeze and we will be in LA.
Well, and we will be watching paraclimbing as well.
Welcome to TKFLASTAN.
Now is the time of the show where we check in with our team, Keep the Flame Alive. These are past guests of the show and listeners who make up our very own country of TKFLASTAN. A slow couple of days for TKFLASTAN, but don't worry.
A few breaths as we're going through the U.S. track and field trials. But for right now, Louise Sugden competed at the World Powerlifting World Cup in Tbilisi, Georgia. She finished in 4th place and got a personal best by 5 kilograms. She is currently 7th in the Paris rankings.
And former biathlete Claire Egan was selected as one of 8 women for U.S. Biathlon's Women's Coaching Initiative. And that is going to do it for this episode. Let us know what you think of gymnastics and fencing. And I'm sure if you're not in the Facebook group, get there now, because I'm sure there's going to be some gymnastics talk all weekend long.
And you can find us on X, YouTube, and Instagram at Flame Alive. Find us on X, YouTube, and Instagram at Flame Alive Pod. You can send us an email at flamealivepod@gmail.com. Call or text us at 208-352-6348. That's 208-FLAME-IT. And chat with us about gymnastics and other fans at the Facebook group, Keep the Flame Alive Podcast. You can sign up for our weekly newsletter with even more Olympic and Paralympic info for you at our website, flamealivepod.com.
And don't forget that signing up gets you an entry into our very cool giveaway. We've got a lot of fun stuff in that prize package, so you won't want to miss that. Next week on Monday, we will be featuring an interview with paracyclist Samantha Bosco, who is a really fascinating woman. So please tune in for that. Thank you so much for listening, and until next time, keep the flame alive.